Welcome back to Royals Weekly. I am your host, Marcus Mead, and joining me as always, he still calls them freedom fries, and damn it, he always will. My brother Mike.
And so does every red-blooded American in this beautiful nation. Okay? They will always be freedom fries to me. And I don't even recognize France as a sovereign nation anymore. So
Nope.
USA.
USA.
Here we go.
Yeah, here we go. That's how deep the red, white, and blue runs in Michael Mead, right? Just
right.
So deep in there, all the way down to the skivvies. He's just red, white, and blue all the way through.
We really should have declared mission accomplished when we got the freedom fries, in my opinion.
Right. That's that. Somehow they taste better. Somehow they taste better than the French fries. Right?
I just don't understand. Yeah, correct. There's people in their 30s who are going, what the hell are these?
What are they talking about? What are they talking about? Everybody over 30, over 40 knows what we're talking about, right? Like everybody knows what we're talking about. Anyway, we're also going to talk some baseball on this baseball podcast. We're going to, I said we were going to review the final week of Cactus League play in this little outline I've written, but then I changed my mind mid-outline and decided we're going to review the Spring Breakout game, actually, because who gives a crap about the last week of Cactus League play? Not much happened. There was some interesting stuff there from that Spring Breakout game, though. So we're going to look back at that. And then, as everybody's been waiting for, our spotlight segment will focus on our preseason predictions. This is our preseason prediction episode. For those of you who've never heard it, it comes back around. We end up talking about it again at the end of the season, and somebody is a winner, somebody's a loser.
Mark's embarrassment.
Also known as something that embarrasses me every year, but that's okay. I'll live with it. We're going to do some preseason predictions.
Segment.
Yes. Luckily, I've made it a little shorter than in years past, so that won't last as long, which is nice. And then after we do a few preseason predictions, we are going to preview the opening series against the Atlanta Braves. Opening day is on, Friday, the 27th. Mike and I are actually still debating whether or not we want to do any sort of like opening day watch along episode. We could do that where we sort of live stream during the game. And so I decided what I wanted to do is get your input. Hey, Royals Weekly Rudos, go ahead and respond with a comment on YouTube or an Apple Podcast review or something like that to let us know if you want us to do some sort of opening day watch along. If you don't, we won't do one. If you do, we might do one. So there's that, right? If we can figure out the technology and all that, right? So let us know, give us your input, leave those comments. If you'd like more content from us on a consistent basis, make sure you're subscribing to that Royals Weekly Substack. That's royalsweekly.substack.com. A subscription gets you 2 extra episodes every week during the season, an extra an article from me every week, sort of a weekly wrap up kind of a thing, and then extra writing and content as we sort of have time to do it, right? And so we're getting 10% off all annual subscriptions until opening day. The clock is ticking there. If you'd like to get it on that annual subscription, you get 10% off. It's a great deal. It's a ton of extra content, and it's for less money than you could spend on a cup of coffee. So that seems pretty cheap to me, Mike. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't drink coffee, but that green tea at Starbucks is expensive. You know what I'm saying?
Well, guess what? Inflation's not driving our prices up. Our prices are going down. So yeah, look at there. Yeah. If you can't do that, make sure you're rating and reviewing us everywhere you are. Apple Podcast reviews, we'll read them on the air. Give us a 5 stars, a thumbs up, all those different things that the internet allows you to do. We're going to start the review of last week kind of with roster news, but more it's like a general roster discussion. The Royals have been demoting some players and that sort of thing, getting the roster ready for opening day. Still have a few decisions to make there. And so we're going to sort of talk about the roster broadly speaking. Mike, how do you feel like the roster is shaping up with certain guys being sent down, like Steven Cruz and Lundo Avila and things like that, and other guys not yet cut from that 26-man roster?
I'm still overall very optimistic about the roster that they're going to end up with. You and I talked about kind of the different things that they'll have to do in the bullpen because of options and because of just the makeup of the guys that they have. So there's going to be some guys who end up making that 26-man that we consider maybe the lesser producer at the major league level, but that's the game you have to play when players, options are limited. And so I'm still very optimistic, though. I like the depth that they have in the starting rotation and still in the bullpen to go down and get a Lundo Avila, a Steven Cruz, those guys can come up and perform at the major league level. I think that's a big deal for a team. So still really happy about that. Been a little bit annoyed that we haven't seen some of the starters perform a little bit better. Lugo hasn't looked great. Waka has been up and down. Cole Reagans has been up and down. If we're being really honest with this, guys, Cole Reagans hasn't had a great spring training. And so a little bit, I don't want to say worried about that, but I wish I would have seen better. I wish I would have seen more of the team in spring training. I wish we wouldn't have lost so many guys to the WBC. We talked about that before it ever happened, but still a lot of depth in the rotation. I think still some really solid depth in the bullpen. The question is, what's the offense look like? And I think it did get better. I think it will be a better opening day roster offensively than what we saw last year, and a deeper one on the pitching side.
Yeah, and if you haven't, go ahead and listen to our last week's roster projection and lineup projection episode. You'll note that our roster that we've projected is so far on the money. Like they haven't cut anyone yet who we said was going to make the opening day roster. Steven Cruz, Luindo Avila, they were both sent down. I think if you're going to point to two people who you would say, hey, these two guys are probably among the 13 best pitchers the Royals have, they're probably among that group, but they didn't make it because they have options. And a lot of their relief pitchers don't. Bailey Falter doesn't have any options. I don't think Alex Lang has any options. Nick Mears,
I think
Lang
he's got
does
one.
not.
Mears has none.
I checked the other day. I'm pretty sure Lang doesn't have any.
Lang doesn't.
Right? And
Lynch only has one. He's still got one, right?
I don't remember.
We went through all those several episodes back.
Yes. Yes. There are guys, the guys there ended up keeping, a lot of them don't have options. And that's why they ended up keeping them, because they want to keep as much inventory on the pitching side as possible. Those are two guys I think you could point to and say, definitely, if this were just the 13 best pitchers they have, would probably be making the roster. Now, they may not have a lot of use for Bailey Falter long-term. So it may be that in a month, Steven Cruz, or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, Steven Cruz is up in the bullpen and pitching, or maybe, injury or something like that. Both of these guys are going to get a lot of major league time. And so I'm not too worried about that, but there are other aspects or other decisions to be made on the position player side as well. And Michael Massey's little injury, I don't know if you remember, he has like a calf strain or something like that. His injury is like holding up the final roster spot. I think I've been listening to or reading some interviews with Matt Quatrero and stuff like that. He seems to indicate that they're not sure if Massey's going to be 100% by the season. If he is, he's going to make the roster, but that means there's only one position left, only one spot left. And it comes down to, as he said it, Drew Waters and Nick Lofton. Now, I find it mind-boggling
for so many reasons. There's no
what
way
does what do Waters not have? He doesn't have any options. And so if they
he also would be the sixth outfielder.
Yeah, I know that would be kind of crazy, right? But so that's what the way he's saying it.
Does he play second base?
He doesn't, right? And so I think it's likely that we see maybe Waters makes it if Massey is still hurt and needs to start the season on the IL or something like that. But I think it's highly likely that Lofton gets that last spot, that Rojas and the rest of them. In fact, I think Ann Rogers indicated in an article I read earlier today that Rojas and who are those other guys? Kevin Newman and Cameron Meisner, all these guys, they're probably going to start the season in AAA. We'll see if they have opt-outs in their contracts that allow them to sort of try and find other teams or not. But it looks like the roster's pretty much taken shape. And I agree. I think it will be a better roster offensively and probably in terms of pitching depth than they've had the last two seasons. I know they made the playoffs back in 24, but I think on paper, at the very least, this is probably a better roster than both of those teams. As I mentioned, we're not going to discuss the final week of Cactus League play because, who cares? Honestly, that's just not anything that interests me a great deal. Mike, are you super stoked? Are you heartbroken that we're not gonna focus on Cactus League play?
Drury needs his time.
Yeah,
he deserves his. Drury and Newman, they were running the Cactus League.
Yeah, I'm sure they were. But instead, we're going to focus on a discussion of something far more interesting, the Spring Breakout game. The Royals played the Rangers in the Spring Breakout game. What was it? Friday, maybe? Friday, I think that happened. If you didn't get a chance to watch it, the Royals prospects crushed the Rangers prospects 9-2. We saw several standout performances. Blake Mitchell and Gavin Cross both homered. Kendry Churio threw 2 scoreless innings. Mike, what stands out to you from that contest?
Well, those guys were all interesting. My boy Carson Roccaforte got a hit as well in that game.
He did. I think he got a walk too.
Did he? Yay. That's a big game for him. A walk and a hit. That's good stuff. Plus, he's going to play the good defense. But I digress. We're not here to talk about Carson Roccaforte. Those 3 guys, that was awesome to see that. It's awesome to see that Gavin Cross has had maybe some, a a little bit of an up spring to go into AAA, where he's likely to end up, and then possibly provide some depth for them as a corner outfielder if he can reboost his stock a little bit. Gavin Cross would be really cool to see. The one that really excites me is Kendry Churio. But I'm going to mention a guy that we didn't talk about in those Blake Mitchell home run. By the way, we've been talking about how we want to see the power back for him the whole spring and really just see him hit, because you didn't see him in games hardly at all. But the one that excites me is one you didn't mention, Justin Lampkin. We haven't talked about Justin Lampkin as a prospect at all, really. He's not in the Royals top 30. He started the breakout game for them, left-handed out of Texas A&M from the 2025 draft. He only played in the complex league last year, just a little tiny bit. And I don't even know if he actually pitched in the complex league. He was assigned to the complex. I don't think he actually recorded any statistics though, but he did 3 hitless innings, 3 innings, no hits, 6 strikeouts, and just 1 walk. I mean, that's a good look against other top prospect kind of guys. The fastball is okay, but he makes his money on 2 really good breaking pitches and a slider and a curveball. And yeah, he's another exciting part of the pitching development that may be really good. And we saw on top of that the Kendry Churio stuff, and I'll let you talk a little bit more about him, because I know you're in love with Kendry Churio.
Yeah, I watched the game, and Lampkin was real sharp, good command on both of those secondary pitches, and they both looked really good. I was impressed by he throws primarily a sinker. Like it was 93, 94. I thought it would be a little softer than that. And, if he's got like that kind of arsenal, he's the type of dude who, like a David Shields, could kind of move quickly, because the command is going to really help his stuff play up a little bit. He hides the ball pretty well too. There's like a deception to his delivery.
That, yeah.
And so, yeah, it was good to see him go out there and just really set him down. I mean, nobody really challenged him. Nobody's putting balls in play hard or anything. These weren't like hard or loud outs or anything. He was striking dudes out, sitting them down, getting them to put the ball in play weakly. It was not an impressive showing from the Rangers hitters there. Lampkin just went out and sort of dominated for 3 innings. Wild to see, because you and I had talked about him like, oh, well, here's a dude who, doesn't seem like he has a ton of ceiling as a pitching prospect, but he's coming out and showing that maybe he's got a little bit higher ceiling than I thought. He surprised me there. And I'm willing to say maybe I didn't give him enough of a chance as a prospect.
Well,
I'll be keeping my eye on him.
I'd forgotten about him, because the Royals took him 71st. I mean, that's pretty high.
Yeah.
But, when you've got Shields and Churio, and they've got some other guys they've drafted even higher than that in the pitching side that we've been focusing on, he kind of slipped through the cracks for me. I'd completely kind of forgotten about him.
Yeah, he wasn't the only one. After him came in Kendry Churio, 2 scoreless innings, 3 strikeouts, just looked incredible. His fastball touched, I think that they officially had it at 98.5 miles an hour. That showed up as 99 on the TV, but he was sitting 96, 97, which is a tick faster for him. He looked great. Breaking balls looked great. It also looked like he added a cutter maybe, which was fantastic to see. And then, nobody's going to talk about him. I know he gave up 2 runs, but I was pretty happy with what I saw from Blake Walters, actually. His stuff looked pretty good. He sat 96, 97 with his fastball too. His 4-seam. He also threw a cutter in the low 90s that I liked a lot. His stuff looked good to me. He had some trouble at times, with his command and things like that. And a couple things kind of didn't go his way. Some, swinging bunt type hits and some bloops and stuff like that. But I thought he looked fairly impressive on the mound in terms of sort of his delivery, the pitches he was throwing, the way his arsenal looked. I hadn't seen it in a while, and it looked a little bit improved. And so I like to see that from him. Mike, you mentioned Blake Mitchell. Does what you've seen from him this spring help you feel better about the power returning after that hamate bone injury?
Honestly, I haven't seen him much from him. As we talked about, he hadn't played a whole lot in the major league games. It does usually take a year or so to completely get the power and the comfort back after breaking the hamate bone, in your hand. And it's a pretty common injury for baseball hitters. But there's still a swing and miss issue on top of the hamate bone. So like we were talking before the injury, we were talking, hey, Blake Mitchell can't be striking out 30% plus of the time. And, and maybe, if you could keep it there, maybe with the power and the plus defense, you could see him making it to Major League Baseball. But I don't know. That's a high number. That's a not super sustainable method for performing in Major League Baseball, striking out 30% of the time. You better be putting out 25 to 30 home runs at least. So I think this is going to be a big year for Mitchell. I think it really either establishes him as a top prospect again, or as a guy who's maybe, more of a backup catcher who has the pop to hit you one out late in a game.
That's probably the floor for him, given the defensive ability he has. I think you're sort of, the range is from that. He's like a backup catcher with some pop to, maybe he's a third division or second division catcher kind of thing. You know what I'm saying? I can start on a team that's not going to compete for anything, but I'm not going to.
I'm thinking of that guy from was a catcher for Toronto. He moved around a bunch. So he caught for the Yankees for a while. JP something, or I can't remember, but they had a guy who was like a journeyman catcher, but he was always good enough with the stick and good enough with the glove, but never great.
Yeah, he could be something along those lines. That wouldn't surprise me too much if he keeps that pop though. And we have seen that pop return a little bit. He's hitting the ball a little harder this spring. He hit the home run he hit in that spring breakout was something like 104 miles an hour. He hit another home run sometime during spring training at 114. Those are good signs for him. He needs to hit the ball that level of hard, because I watched one of his plate appearances in that spring training game, and I remember thinking he gets a fastball on the first pitch. It's pretty much right down Broadway. And he swings and he just misses. And I'm like, well, you want to do more with that when, when his issue is really like, is my hit tool good enough so that I can make contact inside the zone even enough to not strike out 30% of the time. Right. And that's going to be a big question for him. He'll have a chance to answer that question this year. I wouldn't be surprised if he starts maybe in AA, maybe they're like high A because he didn't get a ton of it last year. We'll see on that front. Remember, not the youngest prospect, because he was like 19 when he was drafted. And so he's probably 22-ish years old right now. Mike, let's talk about our favorite piece of conversation here, Kendry Churio. He looked incredible. What do you think his timeline might be? He's still only 18 years old, ended the year in low A last year. How long until he's pitching in Major League Baseball?
I think there's a distinct possibility it's 2028. And here's why. I think guys that have his kind of, really his makeup is kind of what you would say, like the traits that he has, yes, but then also the maturity that he has for pitching. If there's a great article from Ann Rogers about the young pitching with him and David Shields, and it mentioned some of the just top brass talking about the level of maturity that he has to work. And so it's like, hey, when you're a pitching nut, when you're a person who cares about that, and when you hear him talk about it sounds like it. You're like, okay, this guy knows pitching at 18 years old. All that stuff. Those young pitchers that are like savant kind of pitchers always remind me of Zach Greinke, because Zach was a fanatic for those kind of pitching things. Zach was a weird dude outside of the game, and was kind of a odd duck, but he knew so much about pitching and was just such a different pitcher at those young ages. Well, Churio is very similar. The command is next level. Maybe we need to add to his arsenal a little bit. And Zach did that when he got into Major League Baseball. He was adding velocity while in Major League Baseball and learning how to pitch there. I think Churio with the command, and now we've seen a slight tick in velo. I think 2028 is the most likely. Hot take, possibly 2027. We could see him as a 20-year-old. 2028, he'd be 21 years old if he gets there a year early. And that's probably like a mid-season thing. Then you're talking about a 20-year-old in Major League Baseball. And I think he's the kind of 20-year-old that could do it.
Yeah, I think sky's the limit, obviously. And obviously they'll go slow. They won't be like, hey, let's rush him up. We need him in Major League Baseball, because they don't. But the stuff he's showing is really, really good. And by stuff, I mean, yes, the arsenal, but his ability to control it, his ability to set up hitters, his ability to, he's already shown an acumen for like adding velocity and adding pitches to his arsenal. Did that in one off season, right? Like if you're showing that level of commitment to getting better and the ability to get better, that's one huge element to pitching development and player development is an ability to get better. There's an element of that to it as well. And that comes from guys who want to put the work in constantly. I mentioned he added a cutter. It looks like he added a cutter, and that's only going to make his arsenal even more deadly. I mean, his curveball is insane. His fastball is really good. And now he adds a cutter in there that if he can locate it, it's going to be just a nightmare for right-handed hitters. And it's going to let him to, barrel pitches in on left-handed hitters. It's going to be a nightmare for everybody, right? Like, that's a tough thing for people to deal with. I'll be interested to see how much he wants to throw it this season. I also think he's like dedicated in a way that where he's like looking to get his body ready. He's noticeably thicker than he was last year, right? Like, and so he's clearly taken time to work out, add muscle, and that's one of the elements that's helping him add some velocity too. Not that he necessarily even needs more velocity. He's sitting in the mid 90s to high 90s right now. That's plenty for a starter. I'll be interested to see, can he, does the command stay as good as it was last year, given that he's got a new pitch, given that he's throwing a little harder. Sometimes it can take a little time to get that command focused back in, but he's a guy who shows so much promise. Wouldn't be surprised if they start him at low A, but also wouldn't be surprised if they're like, we're going to send you directly to Quad Cities because we think you can handle it. It might be the case.
I will mention he said that in an interview as well, as you mentioned there, how much he'd been lifting and training his body to get bigger and hold that muscle. If you don't know, Kendrick Churio is a 6 foot tall, very wiry kid. And so it was obvious that was the thing the Royals were going to have to focus on as he physically matures. There's the sky's, as you said, the sky's the limit, guys. I mean, Pedro Martinez wasn't much bigger than him. He threw 100 miles an hour. So, that's something that could be on the table for a kid who's only 18 years old still.
Royals Weekly is brought to you by All In Physical Therapy, who are happy to announce that they now offer strength and conditioning programs for youth athletes who want to gain an edge on the football field, basketball court, or baseball field.
I'll take an edge wherever I can get it. All right. I mix HGH into my Fruity Pebbles every day.
And of course, All In Physical Therapy still offers the best in recovery from total joint surgeries and sports injuries with offices in Blue Springs, Lee Summit, and Belton. They'll help you take care of your recently replaced hips, knees, shoulders, elbows, you name it.
HGH and a bunch of cyborg parts. I'm never losing a game of shuffleboard again, and I play some physical ass shuffleboard.
Very physical. They've removed you from a number of competitions. If you're interested in reaching the peak of your athletic performance or getting back to 100% from an injury, check out All In Physical Therapy at allin-pt.com. That's ALLIN-PT.com, or give them a call at 816-427-5300. That's 816-427-5300. Every year, the episode before opening day is dedicated to our preseason predictions. Every year we make them. Every year at the end of the season, we go back over them to see who was more accurate than the other. Every year I lose. Not this year. Not this year, my friend. Like a phoenix rising from the ashes, I will emerge victorious this year because I wrote the questions. I should have an edge, but it hasn't worked out that way in the past. I will then pretend that I've been victorious every year because reality doesn't matter anymore. Just read the news. If you're unfamiliar with the format of how we do these preseason predictions, and you might remember last year, our good friend Alex Duvall came on and participated in the preseason predictions. He was the champion last year. Unfortunately, he is ill this year and was unable to join us. We hope he gets better, recover as quickly as possible, Alex. But if you're unfamiliar with the format of how we do this, I pose an over-under style prediction for individual player stats, and Mike decides if the player will go over or under that number. I guess as well. I put a lot of thought into these, so don't be surprised if Mike is stumped about like, oh, this is a tough one. I don't know how to do this. We're going to start with the position players. Mike, a lot of talk about Maikel Garcia maybe leading off. Maybe he's our leadoff guy for 2026. Maikel Garcia over under 95 runs scored this year.
Let me just say, for as bad as you are at this game, thank you for coughing in the middle of our
sorry
recording. There's a mute button. You can use that.
I did. I forgot to hit it. It came on quickly.
No, it's okay. Mark's getting over an illness as well. Everybody's sick, But you do for as bad as you are at this game, actually physically at this game, you're very good at setting the lines, like the handicapper. These are tough. Mark hits on them, and it takes me like you would think, oh, this is quick. I just pick over. I just pick under. No, you got to dig in. You got to research this stuff because you and I are competitive with each other and have been for, I don't know, 40 years. And so he sets them right where you're like, but wait, this is going to happen, isn't it? So I like where I am. I did some research. I did some homework. I think I'm going to become victorious again. The trophy will just stay at my house. Maikel Garcia, over under 95 wins or runs scored?
Runs.
We're going under. Mark, do you know how many guys in Major League Baseball scored more than 95 runs?
Not very many.
19 guys in Major League Baseball scored over 95 runs last year. Maikel Garcia was not one of them. But if you look at that list, they are a who's who of hitters in Major League Baseball. I mean, you might as well just take the all-star team, and it's that. Now, Maikel Garcia made the all-star team last year, but he didn't get to 95 runs. Only one Royal did it last year. It was Bobby Witt Jr. I think the hype on Maikel Garcia is as high as it will be right now. So I'm going to do the opposite, which is always smart in gambling. I'm going under 95 runs, even though I think he does have a very, very solid to great year again.
I think there's a decent chance he goes over, but I'm not a fool. I'm going to go under as well. And that's because it is pretty rare for it to happen. You have to get on base at a very high clip to score 95 runs. And then you also have to, he'll have good hitters behind him. That won't be an issue, because especially if he's leading off. If he's leading off a bunch, he's going to have good hitters behind him. The question is, does he get on base at a high enough clip to really give 95 a run for its money? Right? That's what I question.
The other big thing is he plays every day. So he's going to play every day.
He's going to play a ton. He doesn't get hurt very often.
Yeah. That was the reason I almost went over, because I was like, well, he's playing every day. Right. And he can run. And so,
he can run. He's going to play every day. The guys sitting behind him are going to be able to hit the ball into gaps and over the fence. The fences are coming in. Run production will probably just be up generally for the Royals. Like, there are a lot of arguments in his favor for going over 95. This is why I put it here, because I knew I could maybe trick you into taking the over 95. I'm going to be what? Do you remember last year we had this exact same conversation about Jonathan India? And you and Alex were convinced he was going over 100. I set the number at 90.
I think it was 90. It was 90.
I was 90. You both were convinced he was going over 100. You were like, maybe he'll get to 120. Like, you were just so on the Jonathan India train. He didn't get close. He didn't sniff 90 runs, right? Like, and so it's harder than it seems, right? The point is, getting to over 90 even is hard. Getting over 95 is very hard. I'm going to go under, but just barely. I think he's just barely under. Next, we're moving on to a guy who will be hitting just a couple slots behind him, probably. Vinnie Pasquantino had a career-high 32 home runs last year. We know the Royals are bringing the fences in. That'll make things a little easier on Vinnie. I'm going to give the same number, since it was a career-high last year. Mike, over under 32 home runs for Vinnie Pasquantino.
Under. Any gambler is going to take the under in this spot. You don't bet on a guy's best year ever and say, yeah, he's going to repeat that. That's just
even when that guy is right in the prime of his aging curve.
Even then, because the guy also has an injury history. The guy also, he could get traded. Not that that's likely, but he could. You never, ever bet a guy's best season ever. You just don't do that. And so I'm taking the under. I think Vinny is more settled in. I think he's got a chance to be really good. But you and I have seen him have bad starts to years. We've seen him have stretches where he was not great and hitting the ball on the ground too much. I'm definitely taking under. He could hit 28 home runs. I'd be thrilled with it. But no, 32 is a good season. That's maybe a little more than he can muster, even with the fences coming in.
Fences coming in, I think, gives him a chance to get over 32. And I think there's a good chance he starts off hotter than he has, given playing in the WBC. He got a chance to sort of play in some really competitive games and stuff like that. Wouldn't be surprised if he starts a little better than he has in years past. Wouldn't be surprised if the fences help him. Would be surprised if he goes over 32. I'm going under as well, because 32 is a lot for him. The guy doesn't hit the ball all that hard for a first baseman, actually not that hard at all. And so it takes some wise approach to hitting for him to get to 30 home runs. He's got to pull a lot of balls in the air. He's got to really take an approach that allows him to do that. I think he does the best that he can, but 32 is asking quite a bit of him. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets to somewhere like 27, 28, but I don't think he's making it to 32. Here's another one. Here's another tough one. Bobby Witt Jr. over under 150 weighted runs created plus. Now, last year he was like 129, I think.
He was 130.
Sorry, 130. I was one off. The year before that, he was like 160 something. Right?
I think.
150 over under for Bobby Witt Jr. in 2026.
Under, obviously. You're going on, you're basing it on the year that he was, again, this would be the second highest weighted runs created plus he's ever had, off of a year you just don't see guys have. 10.5 F-WAR he was worth that year. That's insane. If there wasn't a guy named Aaron Judge in the league, he would have been the MVP that year. And so, no, there's no way. I mean, it's an expectation that he set for himself, but I'm sure he doesn't get to weighted runs created plus of 150. That is extremely difficult to do. He's going to have a great glove. He's going to still struggle with some of the approach stuff that we've seen. And I think the other thing that gets it is after that year where he had a 162 weighted runs created plus or whatever, the book is kind of out on Bobby now too. Throw him soft stuff down and away. And if he hits a single, you feel pretty good about yourself. If he hits a chopping single or one of those things, you're okay. Do not
or if he takes a walk.
Bobby Witt Jr. can, which they're going to throw him out of the zone a bit too, because he'll still chase out of the zone. And then hard stuff up and in can get him too, especially if you've been laying a lot of slow stuff in there. So I think because of that, those aren't the things he's naturally good at. Those aren't his natural spots. I think he's going to go under. I think he's still going to be Bobby Witt Jr. though. He's still going to carry an offense. So I'll take it.
This is where you and I diverge for the first time. I'm going over 150 weighted runs created plus for Bobby Witt Jr. And here's why. I think he is ready to start taking those pitches and take walks at a higher clip than he did last year or at any point in his career. I think we're going to see a more on-base oriented Bobby Witt Jr. And I think that's going to help and show the rest of the league that he's willing to spit on those pitches. And then that will get him more of those pitches in the heart of the plate that he can do damage on. Obviously, the fences come in and will help him in the power department as well. And so I think you're going to see a few more home runs from him this year. But really, it's his willingness to take a walk, which we saw some of for the World Baseball Classic, for the Team USA, which we saw some of in spring training. We saw his chase numbers going down in spring training. If he can do that, I think he gets himself back over 150 as a weighted runs created plus. Maybe it's just over. Maybe he's not all the way back to 162. But I think he's poised for a pretty good offensive season. Remember, still only 25, 26 years old, really has not even hit his prime offensively yet, or maybe is just at the beginning of it. And so I'm looking forward to a really good offensive season for Bobby Witt Jr. Another guy the Royals kind of need to have a good offensive season has not looked very good in spring training, which is why I decided to bring up him and for this over-under. Isaac Collins over under 1.9 F-WAR in 2026. For context, he was worth 2.6 F-WAR last year.
Yeah,
and so
this was a tough
Mike,
one.
where are you at?
This was a tough one. I'm going over, and I think that I largely base that off of he's going to be playing left field, which he's pretty good at, and so he's going to get 1.25 WAR just from that. I think he will. And so maybe the bat doesn't have to be quite as good as it was last year to get there. And so I think the Royals are going to be proactive in resting him. I think you're going to see him pretty much like have a consistent rotation of we're going to rest Collins to make sure he doesn't get hurt. So I think you're going to see him play enough to get to 1.9 F-WAR this year. Maybe some of that's more with the glove. I don't think he has the year he had last year in Milwaukee, but we hopefully still consider him a valuable piece when we start to make that playoff run, and hopefully he's still healthy. Those are the big things.
It's all about health for Isaac Collins, I think. I mean, if he has 200 plate appearances, he's not making it over 1.9 F-WAR, right? That's not enough. He needs to get into the like 400, 450 range like he did last year. And then he's got a chance to go over. I'm going to go over as well because the Royals aren't talking like he's Like they think he's going to be a long-term problem. I know he didn't play well in spring training, but give him some time to sort of work it out. I think the Royals are still invested in him being an everyday outfielder for them for the most part. I think they're going to give him a ton of plate appearances, a ton of playing time. And you're right, he is a good left fielder. That'll always help defensively. And then, if he takes a good plate appearance, and a good plate appearance can often be the bedrock of an offensive performance. And so if he's walking at roughly 10% of the time, I think he's got a really good chance if he's making 400 to 450 plate appearances with the defense, with the on base. He'll get the occasional double and triple, and he'll be good to go when it comes to. And the Royals would just kill for 2 F4 out of an outfielder like him. Like they would love to get that kind of production because they've been awful in the outfield for the last couple of years, and that's why they kind of need him to be pretty good this year. Everybody wants to know about Jac Caglianone. What's he going to do in 2026? Well, we're going to tell you right now. Mike, Jac Caglianone, I know some people might be like, ooh, do the over number for his homers. Do the over-under for his weighted runs created plus. We're not doing any of that. That's not the number anybody cares about. Jac Caglianone, over-under 30% chase rate in 2026. That's the number that will actually determine
that's the one putting
his success or failure.
Right there.
Yeah, chase rate. Everybody's talking about chase rate these days. And so, Mike, what are you thinking? Will Jac Caglianone go over or under 30%? That's a chase rate. For context, his chase rate last year was 38.5%.
Yeah, I put under and then in parentheses aspirational because I'm really hoping that it's under 30%. If it's under 30%, I think we get a very productive Jac Caglianone who hits somewhere in the 30 home run range. It may not be the highest batting average anybody ever saw at 30% chase rate, but that's going to be pretty good. I mean, you're going to be pretty happy with him under 30%. So we saw some decent flashes of a better approach in the WBC. I'm banking on that better approach, and under 30% chase rate is the natural evolution of that. I'm praying to the baseball gods. Oh, Zorp. Give Jac Caglianone under a 30% chase rate and have him carry us to the playoffs.
That's what it might take. I mean, that might be the most determining statistic. I know we joke about chase rate and its lack of sexiness as a stat, but this might be the most important stat for the Royals offense for the entire season. It might be his chase rate, right? I'm going under as well. You might say, if it was 38.5% last year, why are you going under? It was 22% during spring training, right? And so I went and just did the calculations on my own this morning. He had a 22% chase rate for spring training. That's much better, right? And add that to what I saw with my own eyes during the World Baseball Classic, and I start to feel a little bit better that his approach has gotten to the point where he can lay off pitches outside the strike zone much better than he has in the past. If that's the case, look out, because Jac Caglianone's going to be putting in balls and play hard. Will he still occasionally do the things that we hate, like swinging at a shadow pitch 2-0? Yeah, he'll probably still do that occasionally, and that's going to be tough because that's going to lead to too many ground balls and so on and so forth. But I think he's taken a significant step in the right direction, and that starts with lowering his chase rate under 30%. I think he's going to get there in 2026. On to the pitchers. We've had enough of the position players. Let's talk about the pitchers. We're going to do some tough ones. I started out the pitchers with a real doozy here. Mike, Chris Bubic, over under 20 starts with the Royals. Over under 20 starts with the Royals. Keep that in mind.
I know. And then I put in parentheses here. Did you get these lines from somewhere, or did you just make them up yourself? Because this one was hard, man. This one was very, very hard. I ended up going with under. And of course, there are many, many factors that play into this. Chris Bubic has an injury history, a pretty significant injury history. I don't think he's ever made over 20 starts. Maybe one time. 1 year, I think he made over 20 starts. And he's pitched, 5 now? He's got 5 years of service time. So it's tough. And then, of course, you consider the fact that Chris Bubic, being on the last year of control, might be a very big trade candidate at the deadline. So, of course, if that happens, he's not going to make 20 starts with the Royals. There's an opportunity that at some point he has an injury and they put him in the bullpen. There's like a million things that could happen here where he doesn't get 20 starts. That's why I went with the under. There's just so many variables that could keep him under 20 starts. And even if he were to go out there every fifth day or whatever it is, he's the fourth starter probably. So he's your third or fourth starter. Is he going to get 30 if he went out there every fifth day? So
30. I mean, if he literally went out every fifth day, he'd get about 33 or 34.
yeah.
But
And the other thing is, I mean, we're all assuming the Royals are going to be playoff contenders, but if they're not, do they end up not just trading him? I guess they probably wouldn't shut him down if it's his last year of control, but and they were still for some reason holding on to them even though they weren't in it anymore. I don't know. It just feels like an under for me.
I'm also going to go under, basically for all the reasons that you said. JJ Piccolo is such a shrewd general manager at this point that I would be surprised if he hangs on to Chris Bubic. Now, it could be that they have a lot of starting pitcher injuries around the deadline, and they're like, we can't afford to trade Chris Bubic. That's the scenario that I see him getting over 20 starts with the Royals. If they're like, listen, we're in playoff contention here. Our starting pitcher has taken some wounds, and we got some guys on the IL. We can't give him up. We need him until the end of the season. We'll take draft pick compensation for him and call it good, right? Like, that's the only scenario that I see them hanging on to Bubic, because honestly, if they're healthy in the rotation and the rotation's pitching pretty well and they get to the deadline, I think even if they're in contention, there's a good chance that they move him, because it makes sense to. You have Ryan Bergert, you have Steven Kolek, you have maybe some other guys coming up along the system and stuff too, like Steven Zobak or something like that. I think JJ might shrewdly make that decision, saying like, hey, we can afford to trade Chris Bubic because we have so much pitching depth. So yeah, under 20 starts makes sense to me. May not work out that way. That's a tough one. Another starting pitcher the Royals are hoping bounces back very well from injury, Cole Reagans. I went over under 4.5 FWAR for him. Mike, what do you think? This is a stat that sort of measures not just how effective they are, but how much they pitch. Do you think Cole Reagans can make it to 4.5 FWAR? He was 4.9 in his Cy Young worthy season a couple of years ago.
Yeah, that's why I went under. Not only that, I went under just because we've seen some stuff from one last year, obviously the injuries. He's got an extensive injury history as well. And then haven't seen him be super effective this spring yet. I know that it's still in there, but at times Cole Reagans can kind of lose his command within a start. And it's, a significant stretch of that start where he loses it. And then when that happens, he's not only very hittable, he'll walk guys too. And so, we saw that start. I can't remember who it was against on TV, where he could not command a breaking pitch to save his life. That's what ends up happening to him sometimes for an entire start, and he gets beat up. So it would not surprise me if he has a solid year, but just not one that's just not quite as good as what we've seen from him in the past. And then, if he's out 4 or 5 starts for anything, then he's not getting there. So I'm going to go under.
Yeah, looking at this number, I should have made it lower. I should have made like 3.8. Yes, I went ahead and took the over because I'm just very optimistic for some reason, I guess. Reagan's coming out. I think his stuff looks as good as it's ever looked, right? Like, the question is he going to locate those pitches? Now, obviously, he hasn't been great down in Arizona numbers wise, but Arizona's a terrible pitching environment at this time of year. Like, remember, they're coming back to Kansas City here before too long. It's going to be 55 degrees outside, a lot harder to hit the ball out of Kauffman. And so I think he's going to have a really, really good year this year. I think he's going to make a lot of starts. I think he's going to stay healthy. And I think he's going to ultimately show why he was a Cy Young contender a couple of years ago. I think he just gets over 4.5 FWAR, but I think he gets over. Another tough one, and one that will matter a lot to the performance of their starting rotation, Seth Lugo. We've talked about how he's looked this spring. He did not have a great year last year. Mike, over under Seth Lugo, 4.25 ERA.
Over. And I think Father Time's starting to close that grasp around old Seth Lugo. We've seen that the velocity hasn't gotten up to that point from a couple of years ago when he was also a Cy Young candidate. And he is so dependent on the velocity of that fastball because the secondaries that he relies on so heavily don't play up against a very meager fastball. They don't work. The curveball's not as good when you're throwing 91. The other pitches, the slider, the secondaries just don't play for him when the fastball velocity isn't there. And when the fastball velocity isn't there, it becomes a very hittable pitch as well. And so he relies on this delicate balance that when one of those things isn't working, he can get hit very, very hard. And so fly ball pitcher to begin with, and the fence moving in ain't helping him. And so over 4.25 seems pretty likely from not only those things that we saw at the end of last year, especially the end of last year, and also now in the spring. We've seen the pretty much exact same thing.
Yeah, I'm going to go under, but I think he'll just be under. I think we're going to see this year the Lugo that we kind of expected when they signed him, which was just like, hey, it's going to be an ERA around 4. He's going to keep you in a bunch of games. He's going to maybe get hit hard a couple of times because he gives up some home runs and stuff like that. But I think ultimately the craft, the guile, the huge arsenal, the command allows him to sort of, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for? Chuck and dive and, just like dodge his way around lineups in kind
like
of
James
a crafty
Shields
veteran
did
way.
Sometimes.
Like James Shields did something, like Jamie Moyer did for a number of years. Like a bunch
Jamie
of guys
Moyer was such a way soft tosser, though.
Soft tosser, right? But guys who just sort of do it with craftsmanship and with command and with decent break on some secondary pitches and stuff like that. They're finding ways to like limit damage and avoid trouble and stuff like that, rather than really being dominant. His dominant days are over, right? But I think he still has a chance to be somewhat effective in that sort of around a 4 ERA way, as long as he's getting good defense, which he will get from the Royals. Like they're going to have a great infield defense. They're going to have a much better outfield defense probably. And so I think he has a chance to not be as good as a couple years ago, but still be a solid starter. I'm going to go under 4.25 ERA. Now we got Noah Cameron here, friend of the show, absolute delight. Noah Cameron is. He had a great season last year, 2.99 ERA over 24 starts or so. Mike, a lot of people are expecting regression from him. We put the over under at 4 for his ERA. Noah Cameron over under 4 ERA this year.
I'm going with under. Let's go. Royals Weekly Bump. Here we go. Okay. Noah Cameron, friend of the show. I'm betting on you, Noah Cameron. And I think for a lot of the same reasons you just said about Seth Lugo, I think the confidence level is up for him. I think the pitchability is still there. If he honestly, there's ways he could still improve from last year where he lowers the walk rate a little bit, where he, gets to a place of maybe the fastball can, just be a little bit, maybe it doesn't go up in velocity, but maybe it ticks up a little bit in effectiveness or something like that. And so I really think that Noah Cameron has a chance to be, a still very, he could add a point to his ERA and still be under this. That's the crazy thing. I know his expected numbers weren't great last year, but I really think he's a competitor first and foremost, like big time kind of, we used to talk about, and Bubic is this way too, a bulldog. He's a little bit of a bulldog as well. So I think he's going to have enough to keep them on their toes and stay under 4 and really justify Q giving him that last spot in the rotation again this year.
Those points are called runs, Mike. They're called runs.
Well, I thought 1 point to his ERA.
Yes. I'm going to go over, but I think it like Lugo, it'll be just over. I think it'll be more like 4.1 ERA, which you would still definitely take from a 5th starter in Major League Baseball who's going to go out and throw 180 innings for you, which I think Cameron's going to do this year, right? I think 180 innings of low 4 ERA baseball is plenty good enough to keep them in a bunch of games.
100 million in Major League Baseball.
In Major League Baseball, if you can do it consistently, that'll get you a whole bunch of money, right? And so I think he's going to be totally fine as a pitcher. I think they're going to be happy with what he's doing, but it might be a little bit more, you hit the regression on the wrong side. Some home runs, maybe walking a few too many guys here and there, and he has some more troublesome outings, but for the most part, keeps him in a whole bunch of games. I am going to go over that 4 ERA, though. A relief pitcher we've talked about a lot this offseason, a guy who we're hoping bounces back with his strikeout rate, Lucas Erceg, over under 23% strikeout rate. For context, it was just 19% last year.
Yeah, I'm going under 23%. I've told you, I mentioned this way back at the first episode when spring training started. He was one of the guys I was going to be looking for, and this was the statistic that I was really going to keep my eye on the most. He went from 28% 2 years ago for a strikeout rate down to, what'd you say it was, 19 this past year? Just not, almost a 10% drop. And so I didn't see anything to change my mind this spring on that. Nothing. I got to see him, I think, twice. And I was like, nope, fastball velocity isn't really where I want to see it. Guy isn't missing bats with that. Isn't missing many bats at all. And so I don't know that he's going to be that guy we saw 2 years ago. And that's going to be a little bit disappointing because it's going to put a little strain on some of those other guys at the back end of the bullpen. Estevez, Strom, Schreiber, those guys are going to be a little bit more strained when, or you can't just say, Ursig, it's you every time. And I'm not sure we're going to be able to do that.
Speaking of Estevez, I almost chose Estevez for this one, and I was going to put the over-under at 90 for his fastball velocity. Over-under average fastball velocity of 90 for this year. But I decided to go with this instead.
Can they put him out there on Friday if they need him?
I don't know. I don't know what's going on, right? Like we're gonna see what happens because there's a lot more unknowns going into the season than I thought there would be, and that's kind of an interesting element of this. I'm also going under 23%, mostly because of what I've seen this spring. None of it makes me feel like Ursig is ready to start, missing a lot more bats, and so. Fastball's not really there. The slider's still good, but without the fastball, it's not playing as well. And you got to wonder, like, okay, where does the swing and miss come from then? I think if it doesn't bounce back, if it's not up in the 24, 25 range at least for Ursig, they're really going to have to start thinking about, do we have to get Cruz and Avila up here pretty quickly to get some swing and miss into this bullpen? Because now Ursig, maybe Estevez, maybe both of them, look like they may not be your eighth and ninth inning guys look like they may not be eighth and ninth inning guys for you.
They might not be strikeout guys. And
that's,
guess how many non-strikeout guys pitched the eighth and ninth inning?
None. Zero. Yeah. And so that's not something we love to see. So I'm going to go under that 23% K rate as well. We'll see how that turns out. As a tiebreaker, Mike and I always predict the team's record to end the year. That'll be our final prediction here for our Spotlight segment. Mike, give us your team record for the Royals in 2026.
I'm going 89-73, which I don't know if it wins the division, but this isn't there is no standout team in this division, so it could. But I could also see it being like a wild card spot kind of a thing. I think that they're going to make the playoffs, but 89-73, maybe at the beginning of spring training, I would have said 2 or 3 more wins higher. But after we've seen sort of the injury concerns with Isaac Collins and seen Lugo look very similar to what he was last year, and some other question marks with the starting pitching and things. 89-73, a good year. We're interested in hopefully following a playoff team.
Yeah, I might have gone somewhere. I went somewhere very similar, honestly. I'm going 88-74, but I follow basically the same track as you. I might have felt a little bit better about this team's prospects before spring training, and seeing some of the stuff we've seen, especially from the pitching. I'm starting to worry that their back end bullpen guys aren't looking great. A couple of their rotation stalwarts have some question marks, and you start to worry, like, okay, well, will Father Time start to catch them in the rotation? Will the volatility of bullpens go like snipe their top 2 relievers? Like it's those sorts of question marks that still exist that have me thinking, okay, maybe it's not going to be as slam dunk of a playoff spot as I may have thought previously. 88-74, I think, still gives them a good shot to get in the playoffs. Might win the division, might get a wild card spot, but I think I'm comfortable going with 88 wins, 74 losses for the Royals. Royals Weekly is brought to you by Eric Oxer of West USA Realty. Do you have the same fantasy we do, retiring to a land of eternal summer? If you do, you need to call Eric Oxer of West USA Realty pronto. He can help you transition to a lovely home in the Phoenix area and a life of fun in the sun.
There's nothing like catching a baseball game and then stuffing oneself with refried beans.
That's a recipe for a long life, I think. Eric was one of the top realtors in the Phoenix area in 2025 because he gives all of his clients a personal experience focused entirely on their needs. With Eric Oxer of West USA Realty, it's not about him. It's about you. He's there to listen to you, work for you, and guide you through the ins and outs of buying and selling in the Phoenix area.
You don't want to get stuck with the low flow toilets, do you? I mean, my toilets need the force of a jet engine to handle the work I'm putting them through.
I've been there. It's like Niagara Falls running right behind you. Find Eric Oxer of West USA Realty online at ericoxer.com. That's ericoxer.com, ERICKAUXIER.com. Or just give him a call or shoot him a text at 480-383-9745. That's 480-383-9745. If you're at all interested in what a life in the Phoenix area might hold, let him make the experience all about you. The MLB regular season is finally upon us. Yay! And much like when Sade comes on, Mike is very excited. The Royals will open their
smooth sound.
I want an ordinary love. Okay, we'll get sued. The Royals will open their 2026 season on the road against the Atlanta Braves. That starts Friday, March 27th. Mike, tell us about the Atlanta series. Tell us about these Atlanta Braves. Are they any good?
Well, I guess we'll see. Brand new season. Hope springs eternal for them as well. But last year it did not go very well for the Atlanta Braves. They were 76 and 86 last season, which was only good enough for fourth in the NL East. A lot of injury problems they were dealing with. And just, the luster has worn off since a few years ago. That first game, though, we're going to get Cole Reagans versus Chris Sale, the 36-year-old lefty out of Florida Gulf Coast. He had a 2.58 ERA and a 1.07 whip last season. Chris Sale is still a solid to good lefty when he's healthy. He's still a good pitcher when he stays out there. And so slider, four-seam fastball at 94 to 95, a changeup and a sinker for him. It's slider and four-seam fastball 88% of the time, but the slider's carrying the water for that collection of pitches there. It's a pretty average fastball, but the slider is next level, and he throws it a heck of a lot of times, and he's hell on lefties. Chris Sale is. So a guy that many people wanted the Chiefs to draft back in the day.
I don't know if he'd do so great with. I don't know if he'd do so great with the Chiefs. Maybe he's a court. I don't know what position would he play.
Oh, did I say Chiefs? I meant Royals. One of the people wanted the Royals to take him. Was that the Luke Ochaver year though? I'm trying to think.
I think he was. Year? I think that was Ochaver. People were scared off by his throwing motion because it's so weird.
And he's super skinny. Like he's
skinny.
You always kind of wondered that weird, almost sidearm throwing on a string bean. Is he going to hold up? And he has shown the injury.
Yeah, but he's also just been he's also pitched until he's 36 now, and he's still effective, and he's won a bunch of Cy Youngs and stuff. I think
he's a good player. In game 2, there we'll see Michael Wacha against Ronaldo Lopez, the 32-year-old righty out of the Dominican Republic. He only pitched in one game in 2025 because he was out the whole year with a shoulder injury. Did have surgery, I believe, on that shoulder. Four-seam fastball at 95 to 96, a slider, a curveball, and a changeup. He was elite in 2024, but we'll see what he looks like, coming off of a shoulder injury and a shoulder surgery. You never know. So just depends on the Ronaldo Lopez that we get. 3 big names here for the Braves, 3 big names. As in game 3, we'll have Seth Lugo against their Spencer Strider, the 27-year-old righty out of Clemson. Just a 4.45 ERA and a 1.4 whip. Last season, the four-seam fastball is 95 to 96. Still got slider, curveball, and changeup. The fastball isn't what it once was. He was known as an elite fastball guy a few years ago. Last year, opponents slugged 533 against the fastball. The slider's still effective, still mixes pitches well, but not quite the guy that he was a few years ago when we were talking about Cy Young, Spencer Strider. Contender. I don't remember if he won it or not, but he's been a good pitcher for a few years.
Yeah, that'll be the weekend series this weekend, and then we'll start another new series against the Twins at home after that, and we'll preview that on next week's episode. Mike, what household chores do you refuse to do yourself?
Let's see, that would be most of them, but window cleaning, pressure washing, and most importantly, gutter cleaning.
And why is that?
Mostly I'm too busy building model trains.
Yeah, I know that's a big thing for you. If you're wise like Mike, reach out to the professionals at Window Wolf for all your window cleaning, gutter cleaning, and pressure washing needs. Window Wolf is a locally operated small business with all the professional know-how to keep your feet on the ground and your house or business shining bright. I've known the owner of Window Wolf for years, and I can tell you there's no one more reliable for high-quality service. Plus, Window Wolf is revolutionizing home maintenance with their new instant price calculator, which gives you a free quote without a home visit or entering a bunch of your personal information. Window Wolf is making the process easy and the price affordable. And for a limited time only, you can get 50% off when you book using their instant price calculator. Just visit windowwolf.com, that's windowwolf.com, and use the code ROYALS50, that's ROYALS50, no spaces, when using that instant price calculator and save big bucks on quality service. Mike is supposed to be reading his line
50%,
now.
Sorry, 50% off sounds like my jam. That's what I was thinking about in my mind. I was thinking 50% off. I can get down with that. Just like I can get down with Waterfalls from TLC. That's my jam as well. Some dark messages in that, I think, if we're not serious. It's a pretty dark song if you know the backstory. I was going through Waterfalls in my head.
That's okay. Be smart. Let the pack handle your pains with Window Wolf. Get it together.
I'm looking at the next thing we're doing. I need to just pay attention to what we're doing at the time.
We'll end this week's episode like we end every episode with the Just a Bit Outside segment where we talk about something that's interesting to us outside the world of baseball. Mike, it's been a wild week for me. I don't know what you got going on. Looks pretty crazy. What's going on in your life this last week?
Well, a lot of different things, but I want to talk about some nostalgia-based things here in this. I went to, on Saturday, for the first time in a very, very, very long time, I went to a skating rink. Yeah, those are still a thing. Did you know that?
I know. I went to one like 6 months to a year ago. It was a bunch of fun.
What?
Yeah.
Why did you go to one?
Do you know Riggs' friend Nikki?
No.
Okay, Riggs has a friend named Nikki. She was celebrating her birthday at a skating rink, and so I went to
An
that.
adult?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I guess. Whatever. Okay. I guess it's for adults too, which I didn't realize because Mark and I only went to the skating rink when we were kids. And we went quite a lot, though. We liked doing it. It was fun. I went to the skating rink thinking like, oh, man, I wonder if skating rinks are like a thing of the past. It was packed.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, like to the gills. Couldn't get in this place. And what I did notice was there were adults there. Like some of the people there were adults who were just there to skate. And I'm like, that seems odd to me. Because when you and I were there, it was like just kids.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe we just went at times when only kids went. But like it was, and there were tons of kids there, obviously. And also like they had these like walker things to help you skate.
Oh,
I don't know if they had those. Yeah, they're like a walker would be made out of PVC pipe, but there's wheels on the bottom, and kids can hold up onto them so they can like practice skating if they're not strong skaters. So my 4-year-old, got to do that for the first time. But I was talking to the dad, kind of who invited us, a friend of ours, and for his daughter's birthday party and stuff. But I was like, skating rinks and bowling alleys, man, do they ever change? Do they ever change? Skating rinks and bowling alleys the exact same way they were. There was a concession stand selling the nachos. There was the crappy video games behind you, like that you could play. And yeah, it was really cool to kind of jump back into something I hadn't been into in, gosh, over a decade.
How were your skills?
I didn't actually skate.
Oh, you coward!
Morgan did because one of us had to be not on wheels so we could help our 4-year-old who was on wheels for the first time. So I'd
help him by showing him how it's done. So
I should have thrown on some blades and gotten out there just like the old days. But maybe next time I'll do that and, just have the ambulance ready to go.
Riggs was talking smack when we went and I just skated circles around her. She didn't know what happened. It was great. Yes. Love skating rinks. Everybody should go. They're tons of fun. I was going to talk about, I have multiple things I could talk about. And so I don't know what to talk about. I'm going to change it up last minute here. I had a wild story about getting woken up by a bunch of strangers on Friday night, but I'm not going to tell that story.
Well, when we stop, you are going to tell me that one.
Okay. All right. Awesome. It was wild, but I'm going to actually tell you about something else that's like really positive and you should all go do, but before May the 4th. So on Saturday, our oldest brother, BJ, and his wife, Kathleen, went to see the Toy and Miniature Museum because they have an exhibit there on Star Wars toys. And I've been trying to get my brother, BJ, to go to this with me for a couple of months. We just haven't been able to find the right time. He was a huge fan of Star Wars when it came out. When he was a kid, it was when those movies came out. And so he got a bunch of these Star Wars toys when he was younger. And I was like, wouldn't it be cool if he went back and he maybe want to see some of these? We had a wonderful time checking out all these different Star Wars toys. They present them, they like have them displayed as they're done as scenes in the movie. And so you can like see all these cool Star Wars scenes depicted as like toy miniatures and stuff like that. They're really cool. They have all the different devices. And I mean, you'll be shocked how many like secondary characters have figurines, have like action figures. I'm talking about characters that get 20 seconds of screen time in the original trilogy, have their own action figure. Vehicles that only go by the screen in for a second. They have like these vehicles out here. It's crazy how many Star Wars toys they have at this place. the exhibit is only here. It's a traveling exhibit. So one guy actually owns all of these Star Wars toys, and he just collected them because he was like a kid who liked collecting these toys. And eventually he just grew up and decided to collect all of them. Right. And so he's got all these dope toys from all the different original 3 films. And it's just really cool to see. The exhibit is only going to be up at the Toy and Miniature Museum until May the 4th, right? May the 4th be with you. They've sort of decided to take it off then. And so you have until then to go see it. It's a cheap ticket. It's like $10 to $12. Doesn't cost a ton of money. Really cool to see. And then we spent the rest of our time there. We saw that exhibit, but then we walked through the rest of it and saw a bunch of cool other stuff. They have a whole bunch of other toys there from like the past, and you get to see all these different like He-Man toys and, you know, G.I. Joes and so on and so forth. And then they have a whole floor dedicated to just like miniatures. And so like you get to go see houses and like manors and mansions and stuff depicted on very tiny scales. It's very cool. I highly recommend going to visit. It was my first time being there. And so if you'd like to check that out, give that a shot. I can recommend that. That's all we have for you this week. Thank you so much. We'll be back again next week and maybe on opening day. Let us know if you want us to do an opening day watch along. Leave a comment in the YouTube or Apple Podcast comment or something like that, letting us know that you want to do that opening day watch along, or you do not want that to happen. If you really don't want it to happen, say that too, because then we won't do one, right? But otherwise, we'll be back next week with another episode. Until then, be good to each other.
And go Royals.